I'll just read it. I guess it's easier. Question. Believe Christ was born without father and secondly is still alive. Does not this make Christ a special prophet or someone superhuman? If being born without a father makes Christ a special prophet, then Adam is a more special prophet because he was born without a father or a mother. And this is why God says in the Quran that the example of Jesus is that of Adam. Allah created them from dust and he said, be, and they were. The creation of Jesus was in fact a miracle. So was the creation of Adam, and so was the creation of Eve, in the sense that Jesus was without father, Eve was without mother, Adam was without father or mother. And the rest of us are created from a father and a mother. So this represents really the various methods of or mother. And the rest of us are created from a father and a mother. So this represents really the various methods of creation. And it all comes down to God saying be ultimately, and it is, whenever he wills. We believe, as Muslims, that Jesus did not die on the earth. He was not killed. That God raised him up, and that he would come back as one of the signs of the last days. And he would come back in his time and clarify what the true religion was, and he would establish that religion, which is Islam, on the earth. He would not be bringing a new revelation, but completing his life, marrying, having children, and dying on the earth. As every one who has been created will end, will die on earth. Okay, well you can do it, right? You know, you have to switch. I'll take it.
Question says, I am not a Muslim, but I believe in one God. I also believe that God created man in his own image. As creator, he is greater than his creation. If this wasn't the case, he would not expect us to do his will.
Well, if the person believes in one God, then they are well along to being a Muslim. However, when they say, I believe that God created man in his own image, if they believe that God looks like a man, then they have just taken a step backwards. Because Islam teaches that God is unique. He does not share his attributes with man. He does not look like a man. He is not a spirit. We believe that God created the spirit. God is God, and his attributes are unique. Man may share a limited sense of God's attributes in the sense that God is all merciful and man may be merciful. We're sharing some of the attributes, but on a limited scale, not in the sense that God is all merciful. We can never be all merciful. God is all-knowing. We may know, but we can never be all-knowing, merciful. we're sharing some of the attributes, but on a limited scale. Not in the sense that God is all merciful. We can never be all merciful. God is all-knowing. We may know, but we can never be all-knowing. So, if you mean that God created man in his image in the sense that man has some of the attributes of God in that limited sense, then okay, you're all right. And I would hope that you continue to study the teachings of Islam, because if you are sincere in this belief, you will see and you will know that Islam encourages, reinforces this belief, and presents it in its best form.
We have several questions relating to the same point, which is what was the specific situation about Islam that caused you to become a Muslim? What was it about Islam that influenced you the most?
I would say, as I had mentioned earlier, that I was raised a Christian. However, to be quite honest, I was a nominal Christian. Nominal meaning that I belonged to a particular branch, and I considered myself to be a Christian, as all of my friends considered themselves to be. But in fact, we were not really believers. Not really. Because I used to go to church along with my friends, and when we went to church, we were really not concerned with what the preacher was talking about. Most of us, when we went to church, our parents were going to show off their latest styles, and we were looking to see, who's present. Is there a nice young girl over there? I'd like to meet that girl, and the girls were going, is there a nice boy? This is why we were going. People were not, there in worship in that sense. It's just nominal Christianity. And that's basically, you go throughout North America, and probably much of Europe, etc. This is the way it is. The churches are getting more and more, and I just recently saw on television, or was I reading a paper that, one of the churches is even making an announcement to be run on television, to promote the church. Like the way you have a product to sell, you want to sell cars, or they want to sell this church. They're working on a promotional campaign because people are leaving the church. And this is why they even, at one point, they even brought rock bands into the church. I remember, people shifted from the piano and the organs, and they started bringing the band with the drums and everything as a means to attract the young people back to the church. This happened. Maybe it didn't happen in the Philippines, but it happened in North America. And we find, for example, even churches, we have churches in North America that are where the priests are homosexuals and the congregation are homosexuals, because this was a means of attracting the homosexuals. Now, Christianity, according to the teaching of Moses, which Jesus said he came to confirm and not to destroy, a homosexual is cursed. And this is the teaching of Islam, is cursed. This was the crime of the people of Lot. Lot's people. They were homosexuals. This is a cursed act. Yet, now, many of the major churches are accepting homosexual priests, ministers. And as I said, in the West Coast, they have their own church. So we find the religion being modified according to whatever may be attractive to the people. So I went to church on this basis.